two chapters today, and that would be Magic is Might and the Muggle-Born Registry Commission. This is going to be a hard video to do, because this is terrifying, and unfortunately it's not just fantasy. This is an ongoing issue that the world has to face, which is a question of governments and people involved in those governments and judgments about people involved in those governments. Because, of course, the big thing with this set of chapters is the Golden Trio's sort of first big break-in, because I'd really argue they have three in this book, which would be the Ministry, Gringotts, and then Hogwarts again. And it is this startling realization with them of how off the rails everything's gone. Because you're now faced with this tyranny. You're faced with this group in power that has an idea for, well, who deserves to live and who doesn't, based on blood. We are seeing a very tangible version of something that maybe for a lot of us here in the West we've just heard about or studied in history, but in other places are facing every day. There is this issue of governments deciding that a certain group of people needs to be eliminated. I think, again, the one that comes to a lot of people's minds would be Hitler and the Nazis. But I also think, again, that we can point to a lot of tyrannies and governments that have and are working on this system of eliminate some in order for others to survive. And not just to survive. It's not a question oftentimes of life or death on either side. Oftentimes it's sort of, again, you're looking at a group that is already in a comfortable position versus people who are terrified for their lives. But people don't see it that way. It's not always this recognition, particularly from that group in power, of we're in a powerful position, and they're not. Oftentimes, even on their end, they are seeing it as a survival thing. That this other group has infiltrated our society to the point where they're causing destruction, and we need to eliminate them if we want to survive. It's a terrifying picture, because what you are seeing in the book, of course, is this idea of people taking magic. And they're asking these muggle-borns, whose wand did you steal? And the poor muggle-borns are saying, it chose me. I got it when I was 11, just like everybody else. But that's being denied. That is no longer the story that is being accepted. Again, because maybe the top people in power, people like Voldemort and Umbridge, are seeing it as this power play. But there are also other people who are seeing it legitimately as their way of life being threatened. And that's terrifying. Because, oh, our way of life is being threatened, so we need to kill off these other people. It's just causing the problem of now they're not only just way of life is being threatened, but their lives are. Like, it's it makes my stomach just sort of seize up. And again, I haven't lived through something like this. I'm in a very privileged position, very comfortably in a country that has a stable government that doesn't face down on a large scale these issues. And I'm also very privileged in my color, in where I'm sitting, in the middle class, upper middle class position. Like, I'm not on the poor end of things. I'm white, like most privileged skin color that there is. I don't face these things. And it's terrifying to read something like this and have it smack you in the face of, if I'm terrified for people in a book, then realizing that this isn't just a story for a lot of people out there is, I think, even worse. Because it's this realization of, I never want to be part of a system like this. And it's a question of making sure that I'm aware of my privilege and to use that privilege to prevent things like this. Because that's the thing that, for the most part, you are not seeing right now. Though, maybe again, with Arthur Weasley, you do get a glimpse of this. Because that's the issue with destructive governments like this. Tyrannies, particularly, we're going to again use Nazi Germany because this is the big one, and a lot of people have studied it, do have this tendency where they need to actually feed off of people. So they start with the most alienated group that the society already has, which in the Harry Potter world is the muggle-borns, because we already have this existing prejudice against them. It's not just magically appeared when Voldemort came into power. It is already there. We have faced the issue of mudbloods through this entire series. And so it feeds off of them, and it feeds off of their destruction. But the thing is, it needs to keep feeding. A government like this can't just destroy one group and then everything is magically fine. It's a government that actually works off of the fear and destruction of human lives. So it would have to, at its core, move on to another group. You'd have to start expanding the criteria of what is not acceptable. And again, this has been shown within Nazi Germany, where we started out with certain select groups. Gypsies, homosexuals, disabled, and of course the Jewish people. But it was full-blooded Jews. But as the system went on, you started seeing that blood percentage decrease for what was acceptable. To the point where, oh, if one of your parents was Jewish, now you're unacceptable. Or if one of your grandparents was, now you're unacceptable. And we can already see that built into the world of Harry Potter in the fact, again, that we have muggle-born, we have half-blood, and then we have pure-blood. And half-blood is actually applicable up to your grandparents. So if you have a grandparent who is muggle, then you are half-blood, you are not pure-blood. Which is why Harry is defined as a half-blood, because while both his mother and his father were a witch and a wizard, he had muggle grandparents, so he is a half-blood. So we can actually see that decrease built into the system already. Which means people who are perfectly safe in the system as it is now, aka the half-bloods in the system as it is now, aren't willing to fight against it because they are so terrified that they're going to expand this criteria for what is acceptable. Turns out you need to be pureblood by like 5 generations, and that's going to get them killed. And we're seeing this. We've got all of these people, particularly that Harry's running into, because Harry is portraying somebody that's very high up in this government, Rune Corps, we are seeing all these people moving away from him and scared of him, that they don't want to get involved because they're just scared. And that's an issue. That is tyranny on a small scale, because it is this question of, do I do anything and bring the notice onto me, or do I just walk away and survive this? Because you hit a point where you just want to survive it, and if that means a lot of other people die, that becomes an acceptable choice because you just want to get out of this situation. And that's, again, terrifying, because it is a question that we've had to deal with going through all of this, is when the system works against a certain group, you're just scared not to be in that group. It's the issue that Hannah Arendt actually dealt with in her text, Eichmann in Jerusalem, which is the account of Eichmann, a member of the Nazis, though notably not high up in the Nazi regime, who ended up, he fled to South America, was caught and brought back and tried separately because, of course we have the Nuremberg trials following the Second World War. But he had escaped long enough that they actually had to try him separately. And it did become this question of arguing, well, if I was just part of the system, can I really get blamed for what has happened? If I was just doing what I was told because I was part of the government and that was my job and my duty, can you blame me for what has happened? And that is an issue that everybody struggles with, because Eichmann's trial, even now, is strongly debated. Because again, you could look at a lot of other people. You could point to soldiers within the system, prison guards within the system, train conductors in the system. Because for people like this, people who, like me, are outside of the system, the answer always seems easy. That you should always fight against tyranny. And if that gets you killed, then that is a sacrifice you need to be willing to make. So a lot of people say, well, those train drivers should have walked away, and those guards should have walked away, and A and B and C and D. But that's, again, people not living in the system. That's privileged people standing on the outside going, you should have all made a difference. That's not always an option. And that's why it's always highly debated, because you want to point at people like Umbridge, who is really obviously enjoying this position of power, and you can denounce her, and you can vilify her, and you can hate her, and she can be charged for what's happened. You could probably do it with Runecore or Yaxley, but we also know in a big part that somewhere along the lines a couple of these people are actually imperialists, the minister for one. But then can you look at people like the gentleman that Harry ends up talking to, who's shutting down all the flu network, who is doing what he's been told? Could you then charge him with the death of muggle-borns just as much as anyone higher up in the system, because he did not fight against the system? Like, that is never going to be something that we are comfortable in answering, because for me, again, I've never lived through it. I have not reached this point where it's a question of my life or somebody else's life, and you can always, a lot of times you can make this discussion Like, if you sit down in a classroom and you have this discussion, then you'll always have people who say, yes, I would fight against the system, and yes, I would sacrifice myself. But in those cases, again, there is a difference between talk and action, because there are certainly, and we should be proud of every single one of them, people who do fight against these systems. But if you take a look at our world right now, particularly in the Western sort of group, things are going weird and things are getting scary. But the feeling that's also going through is it is okay to take care of yourself. Now, a lot of times people are saying that are, again, saying it to also very privileged people, and they're saying about super negative friends or partners that are not super attentive to your needs, that it's okay to leave those situations because it's okay to take care of yourself. And again, we say that also in abusive relationships. It is okay to leave that situation. It is okay to take care of yourself. So where do we then get the switch when the issue grows to it's no longer okay to take care of yourself and you have to take care of other people? I was not expecting this on a Sunday morning, and I'm never going to be happy with my own answers, because sometimes people are terrible, terrible people, and then other times they are some of the greatest people you ever meet. And sometimes it's hard to reconcile that idea. The worst and the best is not easy to put together. Sometimes it would just be easier to deal with Dementors, because you know exactly what they want. Humans aren't so easy. Governments made up of humans, I think, are, a lot of times are even more difficult. Okay, this is going to be a hard video to upload. Again, this is all coming from somebody in a very privileged position, where I can talk about these things and never have just my stomach clench and my heart go cold, remembering terrible things. And that makes me extremely lucky, and a lot of people don't have those opportunities. So any feedback you have is much appreciated. I'm going to keep reading, and I hope you do too. See you next time.